Welcome back to the TOTECH virtual hiring event. My name is Mark Belaish. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. We'll start in about a minute here or so on the panel. Hopefully you've been enjoying today's event. I've been networking with other people. I've had a chance to go into the networking area, into the expo area, and meet a lot of great people. And the sessions as well. Speakers have been really great. So just one other thing too is that we do add on an extra 10 minutes at the end of this event. So you're welcome to stay on. You can do some continuous networking. You can also go into the expo area if you've missed anything. And by all means, through the panel, as we go through the next half hour, the final half hour of today's event, you can post some questions in the event or in the stage area, and you can go from there. So again, my name is Mark Belaish. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. I'm happy to welcome our panel for this afternoon. And let's start with Malay Kapoor, a senior technical talent hunter. Very great title. Hunter is always good for to have in the name, headhunter. So Malay, why don't you start and talk a little bit about what you do and kind of the roles perhaps that you recruit for, and maybe some observations that you have about the tech market right now.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. It's a longish title, but a lot to cover, so I'll just be brief. I've been in recruiting for over 20 years and technical recruiting specifically for almost 10 years now. I'm currently consulting for Microsoft, based out in Vancouver, Canada, and I also do a lot of positions in the Bay Area in California. Current roles, I am mostly involved in senior software engineers, senior program managers, data scientists, applied scientists kind of roles. So it's all tech world. In my world, everything is tech. So I thoroughly enjoy what I do. Yeah.
Excellent. And Laura Tromp is talent acquisition specialist at Syntronic, a global design house. Welcome, Laura. Nice to see you again. And if you want to do the same, maybe give people an idea as to what you do and kinds of roles that you recruit for.
Thanks, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here again. So I recently started with Syntronic, and I found there's a lot going on. We have a lot in software, hardware, RF. We've got some senior architect roles as well. So there's a lot of opportunities that people can check out at syntronic.com if they want to. We are a global design house, so we're basically a professional services firm. So we have independent contracts with a number of different clients. So I guess our advantage is we allow you to have a variety of options in your career instead of doing the 17th iteration of the same project at the same company. So it's often a good fit for people who are looking to expand their skill sets. We have offices globally, but for me, I do mostly recruiting for Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal.
Terrific. Thanks very much, Laura. And Andrew Deacon is Director of Talent at Briza. Thanks, Andrew, for being here. And same thing, if you can give a...
Sure. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me back. My name's Andrew. I've been in recruitment for about a decade now, mostly working with startup, scale-up companies. Supported Uber as they grew in Canada, a company called Cleolast, now with Briza. We're an API company. Mostly recruiting across software engineers right now, but my career spanned a bit of everything: sales, product, engineering, of course, and kind of everything in between. So thanks again for having me, Mark. Happy to be here.
No problem. Thank you again, Andrew, for being as well. So again, if you have any questions for anybody on the panel, feel free to put them in the event or in the stage chat or in the Q&A, and I'll happy to moderate as well. So why don't we start? Here's a question from Alyssa that came in just a few minutes ago as well. But so, is it okay to negotiate salary at an interview? Laura, why don't you talk about that one?
I think definitely that for me, I want to know. It's one of the questions that I always ask because I want to make sure that there's going to be a good fit between what their expectations are and what their skills are. You never want somebody to be undervalued. That being said, there are some constraints that will be either from the market or with us as a professional services firm. We can't bill out more than what we're going to pay that person. So there's always the opportunity, I guess, to negotiate for sure.
Okay, Malay, anything to add to that question?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's certainly a key question in all the candidates that we interview. For sure, yeah. We would also like to ask the expectations first. We don't ask for, because of the legal issues, especially in the US. It's not so true for Canada, but in the US, you cannot ask the current salaries. So you have to be a little mindful of how you're dealing with the candidates, and you're not getting too much into like personal financial data kind of information. But yeah, sure. I mean, always ask and get the expectations right.
Okay, great. Maybe, Andrew, a variation of that question, and that is, it seems like it's a bit of a Wild West kind of thing, right? With COVID, I read something yesterday, interestingly, that I think it was, well, I know it was Google, but I think they said something like, they reserve the right to drop someone's salary by 25% if they're going to work from home. And this is something new, and, whether it happens or not, but this was the headline. So how do you, in today's world, how would you suggest a job seeker gets information about what salaries are out there, what they should be asking for? Do they just base it on what they've been earning? Is there a grid somewhere? Where would you go?
Yeah, it's a good question. And yeah, lots of kind of debate about localizing salaries or having just global salaries, and tons of implications on both those sides. But it's an interesting one that rages on. I think that when I'm looking for a job, like, as I start interviewing, you'd hope that the recruiter would cover it early, at least give you like a broad range that's going to give you a sense of where the ballpark is. Obviously, throughout, they're going to measure your skills and determine where you land on that range. But I think, like, researching, there's sites like PayScale, Glassdoor. Data is not perfect, but it's somewhere to start to get a sense of what people earn in those roles, and you can usually find the role you're recruiting for or interviewing for, especially for big companies. But I think it's totally okay, in my opinion, to just ask the recruiter or hiring manager you're dealing with early on. You want to make sure you're framing it as like, this isn't the only thing that's important to me, but for most of us, we're all here to pay our bills at the end of the day. And I think it's totally fair game to cover that early on.
Perfect. Anything to add, Laura or Malay, to that?
I would just say, for me, and Malay might be able to commiserate, but I had a candidate who was in San Francisco, wanted to move to Ottawa, had zero concept about what the pay scales were like. And it was probably about an hour to an hour and a half of going back and forth and providing him with some of those resources that Andrew mentioned, the Glassdoors and whatever. And there are actually some sites that you can plug in how many years of experience you have, what your degree is in, blah, blah, blah. And it will spit out a salary for you, because he was at like $600,000 or something like that in California, and wanted $400,000 to come to Ottawa, which is just not a realistic salary. So I think it is good to do some research. If you're someone that's a new grad and you're coming out, it might be a good starting point for you. But at the bottom, if you're making a certain salary where you are, you're not going to move for something that's less, unless they have a lot of other, either you're unhappy with your job or they've got stock options or bonuses. So it's also important to consider total compensation when you're looking at money. It's not just what do you make as your base, but what are the other options that you have.
Right. Great points. And what about, the opening up after COVID of people working from home and people, geographic borders being broken down? And Malay, you mentioned about hiring in both Canada and the US, or recruiting for Canada and the US. What are you all seeing about that? Is it, are you getting applications from other areas that you didn't get before, from other geographic areas? Is it breaking down? Is it more localized still, like what we used to have? What are you seeing? What are you feeling? What are you sensing?
Yeah, it's a bit of a interesting mix of applications that we are seeing. A lot of companies are going into more remote work, so it's like no more boundaries for hiring anybody within the country or even internationally. We always get a roadblock from the payroll department that where the salary will have to be pitched in, and that's kind of lets at least me to make a decision whether we should hire somebody remotely or not. But in the end, it is either the company policy or it is the hiring manager's decision whether they want to have a local candidate or a remote candidate. Just an extension of what Laura mentioned about salaries, because I work both in US and Canada, I always like to set the expectation, the comp expectations for candidates moving from one country to the other, irrespective of work authorization issues that they have. The Canadian salaries are not as high as the American salaries, so I like to set that expectation. But at the same time, there are other things that you get to gain in Canada as compared to the US, like the healthcare expenses and stuff like that. So it's very important for me to set those expectations before they move into the process, because it's quite a waste of time for people. Like Laura said, that from 600,000 to 400,000, nobody wants to move that kind of low, but they have to be realistic to the local labor market.
Good points. Andrew, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's definitely interesting, shifts in the last year with more remote options. I think there's so much, more opportunity for people outside of their, physical location now. I don't know if it's like spiked applicants up of people outside. I think the reason being because like there is so many options, so now it's like spread around more. But I think we'll continue. Like when I'm posting a job, like I'm always making it really explicit if it's like remote or remote optional. And I encourage like job seekers when they're looking, you can kind of use job boards, and some of them have a box you can check for remote jobs, or you can just like search in the keywords for remote and pull those jobs out. But yeah, I think it's definitely shifting the way we recruit a little bit and how we kind of think about our candidate pools.
So one of the there was a recent stat that or survey that came out, and it asked recruiters what are the most important factors when they consider a candidate, and the number one by far was previous job experience, and that was, I think it was 70% of people, recruiters said that is the most important factor. Is that the case for the three of you? What else do you factor in? What else goes into making a decision on someone?
I guess I'll jump in. I don't know. I think one thing I look for, of course, experience is important for sure. Like that's kind of where we start. But I think what I look for on the resume is people that show that they made an impact. Especially, whatever you're hired to do, like how did you kind of go above and beyond and move the needle for that company? And writing your resume in a way that really focuses on impact, achievements, as opposed to just like a laundry list of the tasks you did day to day, I think is something that really helps you stand out when I'm looking at a resume, and really being able to, not beyond, the resume review, but in an interview, like articulate that impact, I think is super key. I think the second thing I'll say is, especially when recruiting for more junior, intermediate type of roles, is people with a growth mindset, people that have like pushed themselves to improve, push themselves to learn new skills. You might be applying for a job that's not exactly the same as your past experience, because a lot of us want new experiences. So you better be able to show how you've like worked towards that, what steps you've taken to really walk in that direction, and what you're doing outside of work, whether it's coursework or just your own self-learning or mentorship or whatever it is, to really enhance those skills.
Laura, Malay, do you want to add anything or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, good point on that, Andrew, for growth mindset. Like for me, that's like one of the key factors that I always look at during the whole interview process. Starting from the resume, what I like to look is there a story? Is there a narrative in the resume which the candidate is trying to say? And is the resume really talking to me about what the life and career experiences that the person has had? Once we have that, we shortlist them based on skills and a pattern of the career journey they've had. Then we take them through the technical skill assessment and through a loop interview session. In the end, the decision is based on a good match between what the hiring team is looking for and the candidate. Any candidate who does not make it through the process does not mean that they're not fit for doing that job. They could be fit for another team or another hiring manager that they would be working for. So, I mean, we have a good, robust system of placing candidates across teams as well. So we are always looking for screening in candidates rather than screening out.
I think if I could add one more thing to that, I agree with what both the other panelists have said, but I would take it one step further. And for me, I also like to understand what the candidate's motivation is. Why are they looking for a job? How is it that we're going to be able to partner together? Because they may have all of the technical skills in the world and be able to do the job, but if they don't want the job, or it's not what they have in mind, or there's no career path for them, you're going to spend all that time and energy hiring someone, and 6 months to a year from then they'll be gone.
Good points. So I'm here with the panel. My name is Mark Belaish. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. Malay Kapoor is senior technical talent hunter. Andrew Deacon is director of talent at Briza. And Laura Tromp is talent acquisition specialist at Syntronic, a global design house. If you have any questions for the panel, feel free to put them in the stage or in the event chat. I'm happy to moderate them as well. So we have a question from Mona. Let's start with Mona. For an entry-level position, I had an interview that the employer asked for 6 months of experience. So how would someone like Mona get around that? You know, it's an entry-level position where you're asking for 6 months. What if they don't have 6 months of experience? How would you suggest getting around that? Or is there a way of getting around that? And then open to anybody to answer.
I'll maybe jump in with that one. I have a friend of mine, her husband is a brand new grad, and we've been kind of going over these, like, how are we going to get around having that experience requirement? So what I've suggested to him is make sure that if you have, like, if you were, for example, an engineer, you must have done some projects. You know, maybe you have a co-op work term, maybe you have other, I had one candidate actually email me a section of code that she had written. So there's other, I guess, areas that you can point to. The GitHub, some people do some programming on there and attach that to their resumes. So I think, you know, ultimately, if an employer wants 6 months of work experience, you probably should have been screened out in the first place. Like, most of them will consider those things. It's just how you phrase them and making sure that you have the transferable skills. If you took a course or a class, making sure that that's really clear if it matches what they want in the job description.
Andrew or Malay?
Yeah, I'll just add a bit onto that as well. I mean, I think, you know, especially in those new grad, we want experience for like a new grad. It's like kind of a strange kind of ask, I guess. But I think, you know, this applies to any level really, but like when I'm going into an interview, I'm like looking at that job description. I'm trying to understand exactly what problem am I trying to, or do they want me to solve in this job here? What's kind of the you know, meat of the job there. And then I'm preparing by really like listing out what kind of experiences in my background kind of draw to that. So I'm ready, like ready with examples, ready to jump in with like past experiences. It doesn't have to be exact job experience, but especially for example, in the context of a new grad, you know, what have you done, whether, you know, like Laura said, co-op or, you know, experiences you gained throughout that, you know, your university or prior, that are going to, you know, help illustrate how you're a good fit for that job. And just coming into that interview with like examples ready to go and having thought through, you know, using that job description or what you've learned about the job, how am I going to prove to them that I can solve their problem and you know, have an impact on that team, I think is really important to walk into an interview armed with that.
Terrific. Malay, I want to ask you this question. This is from Safa. For a new immigrant, if you don't have Canadian experience, it seems to be a constraint. I know that tech skills are easily transferable. I was wondering, how should you go about it if you are new? So there's that question, but I also want to ask you, Malay, if you see that same, you know, hey, you don't have Canadian experience in the US, like, hey, you don't have US experience, does that apply? So maybe the two-part question to that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. In my experience, in tech jobs, I don't think that really matters as much because tech skills are globally applicable and most people coming from different countries are equally qualified and competent in those things. So I have recently not come across situations where employees are asking for local experience, either Canadian or American experience, to be able to do it. As long as they have the basic skill set, they have the qualifications, and they have the drive to, you know, do the things that they really want to do. I think Andrew mentioned about growth mindset. I think that's a key area for anybody to proceed and succeed in a job.
Okay, perfect. I have a question from, I'm not sure, hopefully I get the right pronunciation, Bolade, and that is how to tie your resume to ATS and ATS applicant tracking system. So maybe for someone who doesn't know what ATS or applicant tracking systems are, how do you tie it into that? What should a candidate do to have a better chance? Open to anybody to answer. Take that one on. Nope.
Yeah.
We just started using Lever, which is an applicant tracking system, but it doesn't rate the resumes based on keywords or anything like that. I still have to screen through every single one of them. So what I would say is, you know, if if I have 100 resumes and you get 30 seconds, make sure the top part of your resume is what you want me to see first, because if I don't see what I want in that first piece, you may not make it through to the very end of the resume. Like, you're going to get a once over or screen through. So make sure that whatever projects that you worked on are clearly outlined. Like Andrew said, make sure that it's not just I did this, I did this, I did this. How did you impact the company? What achievements did you have there? You know, did you win awards for something? For new grads, that's the same thing applicable for schools. You know, did you get a 4.0 GPA? Like, what is going to set you apart? And make sure that it's concise. Don't send a 20-page resume because it won't get read.
Okay, great. Andrew?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, I think a lot of recruiters review every resume. Like, I've never been in a job where I didn't go through every single resume that came in. Like Laura said, I know some bigger companies use certain tools to narrow it down, and that's fair for those. You want to make sure keywords are there, stuff like that. Another thing I'll add is just like, all modern ATSs are going to pick up a Word or a PDF doc. Where sometimes they can go wrong is if you have a bunch of graphics or like a strange kind of formatting, they can get like unreadable on that ATS. So you probably just want to go with like simple formatting. PDF probably is your best bet, in my opinion, from the ATSs I've used. And yeah, reiterating what Laura said around like the brevity on the resume. Certain places like, large tech companies, for example, get hundreds upon hundreds of resumes every day. And, it's you need to kind of get to the point on them and make sure it's really front and center where your experience is. So brevity is good.
Great. And Farima asks, how should you go about finding a job without having any Canadian references?
I was going to say, for me, we've checked references all over the world, so that doesn't really apply for Syntronic.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as references are concerned, I have been accepting references internationally as well. So if they have worked or they've studied in international universities, I've accepted references from their professors, teachers, if they have not had any work experience. And if they have come from other countries where they have worked. So I have no problem in reaching out to their previous managers or anybody they want to give as reference. So I don't think Canadian references as such is a roadblocker for anybody to get a job. At least in my experience, it has not happened. Locally, of course, there are many people who do volunteering before they can actually get a full-time job. I accept references from volunteering organizations as well and their jobs. So I don't think that's really a blocker, at least not for me.
Okay. So what mistakes? Yeah, sorry, Andrew, you were going to say?
I was just gonna say, yeah, I agree. Like, the world's, bigger now, and I think, have no problem with international references. We've gotten a few questions on kind of like Canadian experience and things like that. One thing I will say that isn't necessarily answering this question is I know North American companies really well. So when I see like certain notable companies, that obviously stands out to me. I don't know international companies or companies, whether they're in India, Nigeria, wherever, right? And so what I found really helpful is when people actually describe what those companies have done. Sometimes on your resume, you skip that part, but like I've seen some people just put like 1 or 2 lines at the start. Here's what this company did, and then I have a handle on like what kind of industry you're coming from, because I can't necessarily make that determination since I'm not as familiar with international companies. So I find that helps get your resume through the door as well if you're like clear about what the company has done, and then we can kind of relate it to whatever company we're recruiting for.
Right.
I would definitely agree with that. I've gone so far as to like Google those companies because I don't know. So that would save me time.
Yeah. Sounds great. So maybe you can cover like, we had a good process before the pandemic hit, interviews where people knew what to do in person and so on. And then, all of a sudden everything switched to virtual and Zoom and whatever else, video interviews. So what mistakes have you seen? What advice would you give to people who are now doing virtual interviews? Maybe without naming names, maybe some things that you saw, that you heard, that you interviewed somebody and you said, man, if only that person knew, right? Any stories that you can share that you're comfortable sharing?
Well, I had one recently who didn't take the time to download the app, or what we use Microsoft Teams. So I'm like, this is your MS Teams link, and a minute or two past when we were supposed to interview, he sent me a message saying, oh, I haven't downloaded it yet. So step one, make sure that whatever platform you're going to be on, you should have downloaded and ready to go, and be there 5 minutes early just to make sure that everything is working properly. Step two, the camera is your friend. Don't be like, it's like you're there. It's just a little bit different because you're looking at a camera rather than a person. And I would say 3 is make sure you have a camera that works, because it's really unnerving from an interviewer's perspective, or at least mine, to have my camera on and be doing an interview and that person doesn't turn their camera on or says it's not working or whatever. That part of that is making that impression and putting a face with a name. And so I think that making sure that you have a functional camera is important.
Yeah, that's good. Anyone else with some feedback, thoughts?
Yeah, I typically do have a prep call with every candidate that is going to be doing the final interviews. Same kind of tips, what Laura said about camera and other things. So that prep call also covers any kind of technical glitches that the person might face, and any kind of noises, background noises and stuff like that, because you have those additional cues which might disrupt your own performance during the interview. But I think there's always pros and cons to new technologies and things coming in. Like, for example, in my case, we always do an online coding assessment. So it is much easier to do virtually rather than being on there and writing on the whiteboard and stuff. And not many people are used to writing on the whiteboard, but they're used to typing on a keyboard when they're doing it. So the success rate of people passing a coding assessment is, I think, slightly higher when they are doing a video interview rather than in-person interview.
So we only have a couple of minutes left here. Any other advice that anybody has for people watching?
I think I'll jump in, just say, the things that I see the most in interviews is people that just don't come prepared, researching the company, researching who they're speaking with. There's LinkedIn, there's, obviously on the internet, there's plenty to learn about them. Come with good questions, come showing, demonstrating that you have a strong interest in what they're doing, what they're trying to achieve, what their mission is. And I think that gives you a leg up quite a bit, because still to this day, I get a whole lot of people who come into an interview and don't know what we do, or things that are within 4 minutes you could find on the internet. So I think that's an important one. And the second thing I'll say is that the market's hot, and there's options obviously locally, but also options remotely. But determine for yourself if you're a person that wants to be closer to a physical office, those kind of things, because I think that's a big factor when decision making these days.
Awesome.
I would add to that, be genuine, because that's the only way that you're really going to find a position that is going to be a fit with you for the long term, which is what most employers want to have. And further to what Andrew was saying, I agree with everything you said. But also, when you're answering interview questions, make sure that you're concise. These managers are swamped, and if it takes you 10 minutes to answer a question that should take 2, be prepared with, like Andrew said, know what they do, prepare some situational questions for, about your project experience and those kinds of things. And then you'll be well set up to be clear and concise in your responses if you've planned ahead.
Terrific. Well, thanks to the 3 of you for your insight. Thanks to everybody for coming to the TOTECH virtual hiring event. Today's event presented by TorontoJobs.ca and TorontoEntrepreneurs.ca and powered by Event Logic with a K.ca. My name is Mark Belage, president of TorontoJobs.ca. Our panelist, Malay Kapoor, senior technical talent hunter, Andrew Deacon, director of talent at Briza, and Laura Tromp is talent acquisition specialist at Syntronic, a global design house. Feel free to connect with Malay, Andrew, or Laura. I'm sure they'd be happy to connect with you on LinkedIn or otherwise. How did you like the event? Let us know. We'll send you a survey to complete within the next 24 hours. Give us some feedback, what you liked, what you didn't like, so we can get better. I also just want to mention quickly about our sponsors and exhibitors today, TorontoJobs.ca. If you have any staffing needs or if you're looking for a job, feel free to email your resume to resumes@TorontoJobs.ca or reach out to me if you're looking to fill a position. We do have a number of open tech positions as well. We're looking for a React developer and an iOS developer. And you can check out all of our TorontoJobs.ca recruitment division openings at openings in our blog, Jobs in the GTA, and more. And I also want to thank Nerds on Site, local nerds powered by a global team. They're a collaborative team of IT and security professionals. Feel free to check their website out if you're looking to apply to them. TorontoEntrepreneurs.ca if you're an entrepreneur. Visit the website. Curate Talent is the world's only holistic admissions solution designed for higher education. And Wrangle.io, making things that matter. So check out their sites, EventLogic with the K.ca if you'd like to sponsor, exhibit at, or speak at an upcoming event. Visit the website, again, EventLogic.ca. And also some other upcoming events that are happening tomorrow, Thursday, August 12th, Hiring Trends in Canada webinar, Wednesday, August 18th, Canadian Virtual Bilingual Career Fair, and Tuesday, August 24th, how TorontoJobs.ca can help you find a job. You can register at all of those events at no cost to you by visiting TorontoJobs.ca/news. That's TorontoJobs.ca/news. Make sure to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Lots of great content there. And subscribe to our TorontoJobs.ca YouTube channel. There's over 400 videos on all kinds of job search and tips on your resume and so on. I want to thank the team, Alex, Rachel, Sandra, Carla, Sarah, and more. Really appreciate all their help in putting this thing together. There's a lot of work involved. And we do tack on an extra 10 minutes at the end of this event. So you still have some time to check out the expo and perhaps do a little bit of networking at the end. And I want to thank you all again on the panel, and thank you all for appearing on at today's event, and all the speakers as well that were before us as well. So thanks again to the three of you. Thanks to everybody who showed up, and all the best, and stay safe.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone.